About 2 weeks or so ago, I was talking to some women in my church who are in their 80s and 90s. And they were asking me about my sense of call, which was really interesting. And I said, well, tell me about how you have experienced God's call. And one by one went around the room, and each one said, I never thought a woman could be called to anything. Most of them had grown up in the same tradition I grew up in, and they said, when we were, coming to adulthood, we thought, I can be a nurse, I can be a teacher, I can be a secretary, or I can be a stay-at-home mom. And those are the 4 options available to me, and I just should pick out the one that fits me best. And that's what they did. And so I realized, wow, what a privilege it is that I came along a generation or so later and I could know something of God's call to me. I could anticipate that God would direct me. I could look to God in expectation of direction. And so I really did do that. So at all those big inflection points in my life, those transition moments, I was, praying like crazy, just like many of us do, I think. And the first one of those probably came after I went to college, because, you pick your college and then you realize, oh, I've got to have a major, and that comes so much faster than I was anticipating. And so I began to think about my major and pray about it on and on, almost without ceasing, as they say. And as I prayed, I began to feel some direction about that. And being the somewhat mystical Christian that I am, I woke up one night from a dream. And I woke up knowing that I was supposed to be a teacher of some sort, and that I especially needed to care about the students that struggled the most. And so I woke up with that in my mind, that I would be some sort of teacher. I didn't know what kind. So I continued with college, and then that became a really big question. Well, who am I supposed to teach, and what am I supposed to teach them? And I majored in special education, but my senior year I became convinced, wow, you probably aren't going to be teaching ABCs the rest of your life. There's something else. And so I went to a conference. It was called Urbana Student Missions Conference. I think some folks know about that. And I went by myself. I got on a bus going to Illinois. I was in North Carolina. And on the last day of that conference, I was walking across the Urbana campus, a big state university campus. And I was thinking about the future and where God was taking me. And I still didn't know. And a fella came and walked beside me, and he said, so what's next? And I said, well, I think I'm supposed to go to seminary. I'm supposed to go to seminary to prepare, but I don't know what I'm preparing for. And as far as I know, that was the first time I'd ever considered that option. I'd never thought about going to seminary before, but I thought about it then, and so it was sort of interesting. I'm not sure how often God directs us through our own voices, but for me, that's how it was in that moment. And I looked around, and the fellow, he had a big, bushy, kind of reddish beard. He no longer seemed to exist on this campus, didn't see him again. Maybe he was never there, but he was there in that moment asking me that question. And so I did teach special education for a year, and then I went to seminary. And along the way, once again, I was getting ready to graduate from seminary, and I started praying a whole lot again. And this time the pieces just started coming together from my life. this calling to teach from one side, and this theological preparation I had already done from the other. And it just became clear to me my path forward was to get a PhD. And I thought I would do that in one of the areas I was passionate about, in New Testament or church history. And so those were the big callings on my life, but I in no way think that's the end of God's calling in my life. And so for me, that's a great gift too. That sense of calling that I've had across my life continues to the present.